Hey everybody, What's It Fox Gaming here. Welcome to my House 2.0 build. This is a PvP build that I've made especially to complement the apartment. This is a named SIG MPX. Interestingly, one of two named SIG MPXs. The other one has Perfect Outsider, but this particular bad boy has Perfectly Measured. So just like the house from the Division 1, it has a talent in which when you get to the end of your mag, you do more damage. It's a bit different and probably not quite as good as its older brother, but I do quite like the naming they've gone with this, the house down to the apartment, so that makes a lot of sense. It's a nice little homage to the OG house. So let's have a look at the weapon and then I'll explain the build that I put together that I think really enhances this weapon's strength and actually helps to nearly nullify its weaknesses, which I know is a bit of a bold claim, but honestly this build works really well and I'm quite looking forward to showing it to you all. So Perfectly Measured, the top half of the magazine has 20% rate of fire and minus 27% damage. It's usually minus 30% weapon damage, but we've got the perfect version, so we do retain some of that damage, which is nice. The bottom half of the magazine has minus 20% rate of fire, so it is slower, but 33% total weapon damage increase. It's usually just 30%, so we're actually gaining some additional damage here. So yeah, there's definitely some nice additional damage from the perfect version, 3% on both parts of the mag. So a bit of a weird one, this weapon. When it fires, the default RPM of this weapon is 850. For comparison, the Lady Death is 900. 850 is similar to something like a Police M4 AR or an F2000. So just to give you a feel for what it's like. But the first half of the mag will fire faster and the second half will fire slower, just to quickly demonstrate. Now, you may have noticed that was quite a fast rate of fire. That probably didn't feel like a Police M4 or an F2000. And the reason for that is that I run 3-piece strikers. So basically I did a lot of testing with this build, with this weapon. I originally just used my Lady D build, which to show you that is essentially 3 blue, 3 red, pretty standard stuff. But I realised that the 3-piece strikers brings so many strengths to this build and almost entirely nullifies its weaknesses that I've just made a build entirely based around that. So let me explain what that means. 2-piece strikers gives us 15% weapon handling, which is really nice with any SMG build because that improves our reload speed, and as you probably know, SMGs blow through their mags pretty quickly and you end up reloading all the time. It also enhances our stability and accuracy, so weapon handling is always a very strong thing to have, actually with any PvP build these days since they buffed it, but especially so with SMGs. But more importantly, you have the 15% increased rate of fire. So let's go back to Perfectly Measured. We know that the top half of the mag does less damage, but it fires faster. Now there is technically a DPS increase because it gets out so much of its mag so quickly, even though the overall total damage of that half mag is lower, the DPS is higher. There is obviously a difference between the damage per second versus just the total damage. So that is pretty good because it allows you to get to the second part of your mag faster, which is the one that has obviously quite a big damage buff. Now if you add strikers into this, we're actually getting a 35% rate of fire on the first half of the mag from the usual 850 RPM MPX. So we're blowing through that super fast and getting a very big spike in DPS, which is obviously one of the reasons that strikers is good. But it kind of has a bit of a two-fanged approach on the second half of the mag. So first of all, we are negating the minus 20% rate of fire almost entirely because of course we're gaining 15%. So that means that technically speaking, we're only losing 5% total rate of fire on the 850 RPM, but we're still retaining the 33% extra weapon damage, which is phenomenal. And the other side of that is that because we've got the increased rate of fire to stack up with the first half of the mag, we're getting to the second half of the mag that much faster. So we get that big burst damage from the first half of the mag, where it all comes out very, very quickly. And then in the second half, we're getting there a lot faster than we normally would, and then retaining a lot of the rate of fire. The original rate of fire, sorry, so we're not losing too much rate of fire whilst retaining all the extra weapon damage. So yeah, a lot of kind of stuff to think about there, but essentially strikers and measured is, in my opinion, the best match in the game. It just works so well, and there's it not only enhances the strengths, but the fact that it nearly removes the weaknesses, that's quite rare for that to happen. What I've also done here is use 2 pieces from a Lady Death build. Unfortunately, Intimidate and Adrenaline Rush is still best in slot as of TU 10.1 for any SMG build, so I'd be silly not to go for those if I wanted to get the best out of the damage of this weapon. Obviously I want to roll everything into crit chance and crit damage, so this particular backpack here is a really strong piece. All three of my strikers pieces have crit chance rolled onto them. Luckily some of these came with crit chance already, so I was able to roll them to blue, to armour. I wish that I could do the same with this, because I feel that all SMG builds for conflict and the Dark Zone should be 3 blue, 3 red. So in an ideal scenario would be that these knees will be blue as well. If you want to match this build, you do need it to be the holster, knees and gloves, and the reason for that is that we need the chest talent for for Intimidate, and we need obviously Adrenaline Rush as well, and we do need Coyotes here for an extra damage bonus, which I'll explain in a second. The reason we've gone for double Sokolov is because SMGs, if you have a look, intrinsically come with critical hit chance up to 21% as their core attribute, so it's really, really easy to hit the crit chance cap. That means that you can go for a double Sokolov, which instead of having like Providence you get crit chance first, or Seska or anything like that, it just goes straight into SMG damage and crit damage, which is perfect. If you are struggling to hit the crit chance, I can't imagine you would with an SMG build, even if you have a low watch level, but you could just swap out Coyotes for Seska. Because my crit chance is so high on this build, I've been able to actually have a chest piece that has weapon handling and critical hit damage, but don't worry if you can't hit that. Whilst weapon handling is very strong on this build, just having a chest that also had crit chance and damage would be absolutely fine. The final piece of the equation is Coyote's Mask. Now, all SMG builds should include Coyotes for the simple reason that the 0 to 15 meters bonus, which is the place that you will always be, gives you a 25% critical hit damage buff. For a gear piece, that's the single biggest buff you can get from one exclusive item. So Coyotes is, I would go as far as to say, a must-have in this build, unless you can't hit your crit chance. But as I said before, if you get the SMG with a reasonable crit chance built in, and you're lucky enough to get some new strikers with it on as well, then you'll be fine. If not, you may need to factor in a Seska here, which wouldn't be the end of the world, to be fair. That would still perform very well. So we're getting a lot of damage buffs from strikers in conjunction with measured. What we're also getting a lot of damage buffs to add on top of that, this is where it really starts to stack up, is Firewall. So Firewall gives us 10% additional weapon damage to any enemy that's within 10 meters, and it applies that to our entire team. So if any enemy is within 10 meters of me, anybody else team shooting that person as well as myself gets 10%. I'm getting 35% multiplicative damage from Intimidate. All we'll have to do here is again be within 10 meters. So this is why Firewall is a must for this build. A lot of my builds you can kind of be flexible on the specialization, but not with SMG builds. Firewall is just too powerful not to use at the moment for close range builds. So we're getting the 35% multiplicative damage just for being within 10 meters, and that's a 10% additive from Firewall as well. Of course, our backpack is giving us the bonus armor to proc Intimidate all of the time within 10 meters, so that's absolutely fine. We're getting an additional 11% weapon damage just from the shield. All you need to do is equip the Striker shield, so the Firewall variant, and put on the 1% bonus mod in the top left and the 4% in the bottom left. Over here you can just have the active regen mod. That's what I usually use, but it's up to you what you stick there. But then that gives us 11%. Now if you get this to 3 blues, that will actually be buffed to 12%. So this is why I said if you can get 3 blues on this build, even if you've got a Seska mask here with a blue rolled onto it, but of course as of TU 10.1 it wouldn't have a red mod slot. So the way that I built this is probably the best way, but ultimately I definitely would want the 3 blue there. I want to make my shield a bit stronger because it's buffed from 3 blue, and of course I want it to go up to 12%, which again is buffed by having 3 blue. So it's a shame I can't get that, but it is what it is. So you can see all of these damage buffs starting to come together here. We're also getting the 25% critical hit damage buff on top of everything else that we've just gone through, and the 33% from the second half of the mag from Perfectly Measured. If you look at my stats, I've been able to hit the crit chance cap, which as I said before is very easy with an SMG build, and I've been able to get my critical hit damage all the way up to 141.8%. That of course isn't factoring in Coyotes, which will buff that to 166.8%. For a build that has 3-piece strikers, of course being a gear set you only get 1 minor attribute, that's really high. Now yes, I've got some very well rolled stuff here, as I'm sure you've already spotted, and yes, my watch level is very high as well. So if you can't get it to that 140%, don't worry. If you can hit anything over 100, you're still going to be in a good place. So if you're missing a lot of damage, it's really not a problem. Obviously higher is better, nobody would argue that, but it is by no means a necessity. So let's head into a conflict game and I'll show you how this build plays. You'll essentially play it like a Lady D build. The shield is great for keeping us alive because of course we are playing up against the best weapon in the game, the Lady Death. And I will be honest with you, in a fair fight where a Lady Death user versus me starts firing at the same time, they will win. Quite simply, Lady Death is the best SMG in the game, and the apartment will not compete in a head-on-head fight. But that's not a problem at all. We're going to use our shield to try and stay alive. We're going to try and play as smart as possible, and you know, that will give us the advantage. Where Lady Death loses out is after the first reload, because you lose all of your stacks, and the only way to get your stacks back up is to either start running around again, or if you're not fussed about that, you just want to keep firing into the second person. Either way, you're taking a DPS hit, because you're not running to build up your stacks, so you're firing a weaker gun, or you are running to build up stacks, which means you're not firing at all. So either way, Lady Death becomes less and less effective after each subsequent reload, starting from the first. My weapon, the apartment, does not. It retains its strengths regardless. We don't need to worry about building stacks, so the longer a fight goes on, the better this weapon becomes, versus the Lady Death, which becomes worse the longer a fight goes on. So that's just something to bear in mind there. You know, if you see a Lady Death user, maybe don't get into a 1v1 with them straight away. Just draw the fight out, shoot them from distance, and essentially when they lose their stacks, your weapon will massively outperform a no-stack Lady D. For my secondary skill, I do use the booster hive, because unfortunately there seems to be an overabundance of Eclipse at the moment. I don't know why people are crutching on it so hard, but it is an absolute nightmare to come up against. I suppose it's just cheap and easy wins, so I can't really blame people for using it, because it does sort of guarantee the win. But the booster hive cleanses all status effects when one of the drones hits you, regardless of the skill tier, and then gives us a nice weapon handling and has a protection buff for 5 seconds. So that will be a must-have skill for me. You know, I can't think of any other skill that I'd rather take than a booster hive alongside my shield at the moment, but by all means, if you're more comfortable with a different type of build, then try and go for that.
Defeat the enemy before your reinforcements.
Right, let's see how we do. So with the strikers 15% weapon handling, we're about 970, 980 weapon damage here anyway. Excuse me, not weapon damage, RPM. So we've actually buffed it to over the rate of fire of a traditional Lady Death, whilst giving ourselves a lot of critical hit chance and damage at the same time. So, you know, it does feel really clean and sort of just precise to fire, because we're getting the weapon handling as well as the RPM buff. Where is this team? Oh, there we go. They're on my teammate. I'm coming to help you, buddy. And yeah, honestly, it absolutely melts through tanks. Oh, I don't even know I'm here, do they? And that's outside of Intimidate range. We were able to one-clip that guy. Where did the rest of his team go there? There's nobody on the roof that I can see. We killed 2 of them. Well, I guess we'll go wait for them to start coming in from spawn. Plus, look how cool this weapon looks as well. The MPX is the best looking weapon in the game. The other advantage of Firewall is the armor kit. Now you may notice that I don't set people on fire when they break my armor. I did disable that. I despise that as a talent, and it's getting removed in TU11 for PvP anyway. So yeah, I took it off. That guy would have been dead ages ago if it wasn't for my shocking accuracy. Come and help you, team. I'm coming to help you. Oh, look at that. Oh, I've left my boost tied out somewhere.
Explosive seeker mine detected.
Got no armor kits now, so I'm going to dip, get healed up. Yeah, it just feels so good to use. With all that weapon handling, you got to think we've got 15% from my... Oh, you did not come to the right part of the neighbourhood, brother. We've got 15% from strikers, 8% from my chest piece, as I was able to get this particular roll here with the 8%. So that's 23%. Plus we're getting 20% from my booster hive, so 43% weapon handling for just dropping a booster hive. It's crazy.
The boost is being taken by allies.
And that rate of fire is just insane. Let's leave this here.
The boost has been taken by allies.
The enemy is about to be pulled out. You're too strong for this.
Ah, I tried to pick it up in time. Right, just gonna wait to heal up again. Oof. You ready? Again to that second half. 192 per crit there. Pretty dirty.
An agent needs
Yeah, this is just
assistance.
getting mean now. I need to let him get out of spawn. I want to try and get a fair fight here. But yeah, so its 1v1 capabilities against anything other than a Lady Death are really strong. Which I know sounds silly. It's like, well, that's the best weapon in the game, so why are you showcasing a build what's it that gives us a subpar weapon? Lady Death will be nerfed, don't worry. And not everybody uses it.
Serious trauma detected.
Ah, teammate. Ah, teammate, I thought you had my back, teammate. Ah. Nah, that's fair. That guy was always going to kill me, to be fair. I dropped the booster hive there and put my shield out, and I hoped that it would free me. Booster hives do cleanse your foam faster than you manually cleansing it. But what cleanses it even faster is a teammate shooting your feet, so maybe that guy didn't know that, but that's not a problem at all. This is what I found, though, with Conflict and why they just, you know, you probably just always see the same teams in here, and it's very hard to matchmake, as every single game I play, all I see is Riot Foam and Eclipse Fire. Every single game, and it just makes testing builds to get out to you guys so difficult, which is a shame, really, because, you know, there are so many great weapons and builds out there that are all just put to shame by somebody just Riot Foaming you to the floor or using Eclipse. And yes, I do have a Hasbro build ready for that, but obviously when I'm showcasing a build for you guys, I don't have the luxury of switching out to that, and it can make it quite difficult. So, you know, that in conjunction with the fact that I'm solo queuing as well, again, doesn't make it particularly easy. But never mind, you know, that was a good game. I enjoyed that. Let's see where we finished. So we got 4 kills, 1 death, and 6 assists with 14, we'll just say 15 million damage. I think that's what's that, 4k less than 15 mil. So a pretty high damage stat considering we're not running a Lady Death. You know, 6 assists is great. It just shows that we were helping our team out as much as possible there. So yeah, that's the build. You know, you can see where all of the damage comes from. There's so many different places that it is coming from, and with all of the different buffs that are active at the same time. And we're not having to worry about activating things like in sync by getting a drone out or redeploying our shield every 5 seconds. There's nothing we really need to do to activate the apartment's strengths. Just utilising a high crit chance and damage build with strikers, and obviously the apartment is enough to really bring out all of its strengths. And you know, it's honestly, it's an absolute joy to use, and it's such a good looking weapon as well. Try it out, you know, try this build out, screenshot it if you need to. Honestly, I think this is the best way to play any measured weapon is 3-piece strikers. But let me know if you have a better version of the build. I'm very curious to hear how people have been playing this, and if you think there's any improvements that could be made to the build. Thank you very much if you did watch through to the end of the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.